right?
Right. Yes.
Metaphysically speaking. Our theme this month has been inspired by the summer heat that has crossed our paths. We still are in the middle of it. And we have learned how to keep our cool during this heat. And I've talked about the whole month, that's been our theme, different ways where we can keep our cool. But we're using it as a powerful metaphor for how we handle life when it heats up. Because it can heat up sometimes. It's not always cool and smooth, you know? So each week this month we are exploring different ways that we can keep our spiritual cool when that heat is on. So continuing our work from last week, which was, if you were here last week, it was really a beautiful, I thought, a beautiful talk in embracing our shadow self, which we all have, whether we like it or not. It's there. And anyway, we're going to get into all of that today because I have a great talk for you. So we are going to, the topic today is time to simmer down. And we're going to take an open and honest look at how we heat up with that emotional response that we call anger by exploring questions like, was it really worth it? Is it ever productive? And most importantly, what you can do with yours, right? So here's a little heads up. The answers might not be exactly what we think they will be. And another thing is, have you really looked at anger? And have you really came up with ways that you can not only deal with it, but turn it around to serve you? All right? Important. So before we look at those questions, let's just back up a little bit to last week. Last week, as I said, we looked at the shadow side of life, which is the lowercase l, which means humanity. And we talked about it as the relative, all right? It's the relative, it means our humanity. And then we discussed the uppercase, which was the absolute. And that means it's divine, it's God, and that this divinity resides within us. The divine part, the absolute part, is the part of us that is connected to all that is, was, and ever shall be. It's what we came in with. It's what we leave with. It's that part in us that allows us to feel the contrast of life. Because how would we know good and bad? How would we know joy and anger? How would we know it if we didn't have this two-ness that we live in? Our humanity and that changeless self, our divine self, that will never leave us, that is always there. All right. And we said that in the absolute, in that divine part, there is no shadow. Absolutely not. It is what we call divine light. And so when we say there is only light, there is no darkness, we are talking about the absolute, and we are all part of that absolute. That is what we have created out of. We experience the false appearance, the illusion of two-ness, when we incarnate as humans. And it can look like a shadow. Remember all that, those of you that were here last week?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep, every word.
Good, every word. I had so many words. I have words today, too. And I shared from this book by Robert Palagye, it's called A Little Book on the Human Shadow. And he suggests that we each were born with a 360-degree personality. I love the way different New Thought writers come at the same truth. And I love that. A 360-degree. Did you catch the spiritual significance there?
Yes.
No. What is it?
It's a circle.
Thank you. All right, sharp punch. Okay, so a circle, that's right. So that circle represents wholeness, right?
Yes.
That is our exploration last Sunday. It's where it ended up, with that whole concept of wholeness. In wholeness, it is complete and perfect, and there is nothing missing. And Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, tells us in his book, It's Up to You, this, okay? Spiritually, we are the offspring, if we wish to put it that way, the manifestation or emanation of a universal wholeness. The universal wholeness is in us a very true sense of the term as the originating principle of life. We have God, or universal spirit. The originating principle of life is the divine, is God. And we are out of that, out of which anything and everything was made. Therefore, everyone is truly born of God. Each and every one of us. Then we are primarily and fundamental, I'm still reading Holmes, fundamentally perfect, no matter what we have done to ourselves, or what we feel has been done to us. But Bly said this, Bly said this, as infants, we express the full breadth of our whole human nature, all 360 degrees. When we were born, we were whole, perfect, and complete. We were perfect because we were in our natural state of that divine creation. We had not had the time to allow life to influence us in any way. But as we grow, we learn that certain pieces and slices of that 360-degree pie are unacceptable to the people around us, right? Maybe we were shamed for crying or punished for being angry. Maybe we were ridiculed for wanting attention or acting proud of ourselves, whatever it was. Most of us have within us something that took away that innocence, and we came to the, it was because it was that contrast of the perfection that we really are. And so whatever took place in this human experience was for us to grow from, to learn from, if we look at every experience as a lesson. But part of us got hurt, and so with that, we formed certain beliefs. So according to Bly, it was as if we threw these unacceptable qualities over our shoulder into a bag which we've been dragging around ever since. And the challenge is, if we don't come to wholeness around all of that stuff that we've been dragging around through acceptance and love, they don't stay in the bag. They seep into our everyday life. They don't go away. They come up again. I can't wait for this workshop in September. Keith got offered, Keith was going to do it on the subconscious. He got offered a gift that he couldn't turn down. It was a $6,000 trip to Costa Rica to see this healing, not John of God, but this healing a person that he's been dreaming of doing, and he manifested it. So that is, I said, oh no, you gotta go. It's like, I feel really bad. I was gonna do the workshop, Costa Rica. Come on. No brainer. So anyway, back to the bag that we're dragging around with us. Because it comes up, whether in small ways or what seems in the collective, in big ways on this planet. We shake our heads and we feel impotent to be of any help when things like this happen in our world. Sometimes we feel that way, or we can get angry. Very, very angry about how inhumane humanity can be. But we can do something about it. And that something begins right here inside of ourselves. And that is what I want us to do more of today. As we look at that emotion that many of us have stuffed in the bag that we carry around called anger, as that comes up. Because when it comes up, it's usually not about the exact thing that's taking place. It's triggering whatever we've been dragging in that bag. But we can do something about it. That's what I want us to know. And that something begins right within us. And so let's turn to our questions that I posed in the very beginning. There are many theories and psychological perspectives on this topic of anger. And what I offered you this morning is just simply my take on it. It doesn't have to be yours, but I do hope that today's dialogue will cause you to think about really some of these questions and come to your own clarity about them, because you really want to live a life of peace. You cannot have peace and anger at the same time. It's impossible. You cannot. You cannot have love and hate at the same time. Love cannot exist in the presence of hate. And hate absolutely cannot exist in the presence of love. So what is anger really about then? To answer the questions, imagine this. I have this story for you. Imagine that you are hungry, very, very hungry. You have $5 to your name. That's all you have is this $5, and it's laying on your kitchen counter, and it's for you to go to the store and to buy a loaf of bread, some food. And you go into your bedroom to put your sneakers, your shoes on. And while you're there, someone sneaks into your house and takes that $5 off of the counter. I would suspect you would be angry. Really, really, really angry. After all, he's a thief. What should you do? Run after him, call the police. Really angry. Now let's look at this again. Let's say this time you are still hungry, very hungry, and you have that $5 laying on the counter. You go in the bedroom, you put on your shoes, you come out, and the $5 has been taken, except that you had another $5 tucked away somewhere. So now you've lost $5, but it might shift your emotion of anger. You might not be as angry because you know you still have that $5. You might even be compassionate for someone that would need to break into your house to steal $5. You might really wish you had more to give them, because that's pretty desperate. So you're not as angry. Nothing changed. The situation was the same. The thing that made you angry in the first situation is the same thing that took place in the second one, but your reaction is completely different. Why? Again, because the first scenario, you had little or none of what you needed so very badly. You had none. You had no other money. That was it. And in the second, you had more money. So what that implies is that something was missing in your life. And when things are missing, like love, we react in fear, in anxiety, and in anger. So the real problem isn't really the $5. The real problem is what is lacking that triggered that emotion. And all of this story was in a book by Greg Bauer, Real Love. I know those of you who were with me when he spoke at one of our conferences know what an incredible man Greg Bauer is. I mean, he's unbelievable. I had people sitting on his lap. I went to every one of his workshops. He was hugging it. It was like a whole thing. But he has these great books all based on real love. It's wonderful. You can get one. It's great. So the parable really isn't about, and that is a parable, he called that, about money. Parables really are never what they seem to be, what's written there. Rather, it's about love. The one thing we all need, lots and lots of. And when we feel sufficient love, real, true love, unconditional love, our anger response is dialed way, way down lower. It is not up in your face as it is now. Usually, Course in Miracles says it's so perfect, it's a cry for love. You get people in your face and they're so emotional, they're so angry. It's because there's something missing in their lives. And in the book, Greg Bauer wrote this: we need to remember that our anger is actually a reaction to the feeling of helplessness and fear that result from a lifetime of struggling to survive without unconditional love. That's the basis for most of our problems in life. I want to tell you a true story about what real unconditional love looks like and what happened in the presence of it. So I'll name the source afterwards. A famous research scientist who had made several very important medical breakthroughs was being interviewed by a newspaper reporter who asked him why he thought he was able to achieve so much more than the average person. In other words, what set him apart? His response said it all came from a lesson that his mother taught him when he was 2 years old. He had been trying to take a bottle of milk out of the refrigerator, and when he lost his grip and spilled the entire contents on the kitchen floor and it broke. His mother, instead of being angry with him or punishing him for doing something he certainly had no business doing, said, this would not be me, but anyway, this is why this man is so terribly successful and feels so loved. This is what the mother said: what a wonderful mess you've made. I've rarely seen such a huge puddle of milk. Well, the damage is already done. Would you like to get down and play in the milk before we clean it up? Said me, never. Okay. And indeed he did. And he got down as a 2-year-old would. Within minutes, his mother continued. You know, whenever you make a mess like this, eventually you have to clean it up. So how would you like to do that? Would you like to use a towel, a sponge, or a mop? Which do you prefer? And so after the 2-year-old and the mom finished cleaning up the milk, she said, what we have here is a failed experiment in how to carry a big bottle of milk with 2 tiny hands. Let's go out in the backyard. This is the mother's a saint, right? But listen to what else she did. It's a true story. Let's go out in the backyard, fill the bottle with water, and see if you can discover a way to carry it without dropping it. And that is what they did. Because of the mother's unconditional love and refusal to get angry when he made a mistake, which is all that is a mistake. It's a little mistake. We make the biggest deal out of the little mistakes. This little boy grew up to believe in himself, to realize it was okay to make mistakes, to make major contributions to the world. And this comes from the Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I based a whole bunch of talks last month on that. It was so good. Success Principle, Jack Canfield. Many of us did not get that kind of unconditional love when we were growing up. Maybe you did. The fact is probably that many of us didn't. Most of us didn't. But here's an idea for all of us. Up until you were about 14 or 15 years old, you can blame your parents for your hurt and your upset and your anger. But after that, it's your responsibility. Thank you very much. It is your responsibility to open up, somehow to connect with and find a way to move into loving yourself, to be authentic and genuine, so that you can let it, when it is offered to you, you can let it in. You can't let it in when you shut down. I know because I did that. You do it for self-protection. And then when you're getting hurt, you close down a little more. And then you get hurt a little more and you close down a little more. And then a little more until you finally, you're shut down. Your heart is closed and solid. And it can take, I left my mother at 15. So I made my second major decision. in my life at 15. And then it took me until I was about 45 to 50, and it's still happening, to allow my heart to open up. So much of the anger and hurt that we feel in this life is based on love. Nearly all of it. Course in Miracles said it's either love or fear. So everything falls under one of those headings. Anger being under the heading of fear. And Ernest Holmes writes this in Science of Mind. Without love, nothing can be accomplished. With love, all things are possible. And when we love, our prayers are answered. And then we get the gift of heaven is made. The gift of heaven is life, not death. Love and not hate. Peace and not confusion. As we enter into the paradise through the gateway of love toward one another and toward God, love is greater than all else and covers a multitude of mistakes. Love overcomes everything and neutralizes all that is unlike itself. Love is God. The divine energy that we call God is made of pure acceptance, pure peace, pure love. But we live in a world where we may not always be able to feel 100% of the time unconditionally loved. And we might get angry. So what to do with it? The next question, is anger ever productive? Have you ever solved a problem in an angry state? Good luck. I'd like to hear about it if you have. Talk to me afterwards. Because usually the worst kinds of outcomes take place when anger is expressed. Well, that question, though, has a yes and no answer, just to give you. It's depending on what we do with it. It is not productive when it manifests itself in a way that was, the study was based on a AAA experiment, and the AAA Foundation for Safety, Traffic Safety, documented this story. It's a study, actually. The study revealed that nearly 80% of drivers express significant anger, not the little anger, okay? So I had to really look at this, because I have a thing with cars when I'm driving, or being a passenger sometimes. But mine might be annoyance now. It's not even anger, you know. But I've been in cars where people get rage, road rage, and that's a whole different thing. So let's get to that. Where is it? In addition, okay, so the study revealed that nearly 80% of drivers, I thought I was amazed at this, express significant anger, aggression, or road rage behind the wheel, at least once in the past year. In addition, approximately 8 million U.S. drivers have engaged in extreme examples of road rage. 80 million, including purposefully ramming another vehicle, or getting out of the car, confronting another driver. That brings up memories for me, but no, I didn't do it. No, I was a passenger. Let me just tell you this, though. It's scary. It's really scary. In addition, approximately 8 million U.S. drivers have engaged in, like I just said, in that road rage. The study also found that events precipitating the violent incidents are often remarkably trivial. And the people involved are just ordinary citizens. One of the authors of the study said this: people have been shot because they drove too slowly or played music too loudly. But violent traffic disputes are rarely the result of a single incident. Rather, they seem to be the result of personal attitudes and the accumulation of stress in the motorist's life. Or I would say a lack of love in the motorist's life. There's no peace there. Just being angry will never solve the issue that's making you angry. The physical cues of anger alert you that something needs to be done. So we can look at that emotion anger, and as the lesson, like, what can I do with this? What can I do with this anger here? The way you express your anger could lead to solving the problem. For you, you may get angry as cars are flying through intersections without stopping, and you want people to be more aware of the children and the people that are playing in that area. And honking your horn and sitting there yelling at people will do nothing at all. Nothing. It'll just make you angrier and could cause the violence we talked about. What might be effective, though, is working with the local police department to acquire better signage or a traffic light, getting something productive out of something that could be a potential danger. There is an example of how getting angry can create positive change in society. And larger examples of this include, like, the civil rights movement, women's suffrage, all of these different major causes, the betterment of humanity, because there has been betterment. Don't believe everything you hear on the news. There has been betterment. There can always be more betterment, but right now. But you see what I mean? That anger can be used to protest. It can be used to sign all of these different bills that come through. We can use our anger to motivate us to do something positive with it. That's the yes part of what we can do with anger. What might be effective is working with the local police and doing all of those acts that I just said. But they're all precipitated with the underlying emotion of anger. And Holmes says, I really like this, let's be a people who are for something and against nothing. So if your anger or frustration at something causes you to take action for something, then yes, anger was very, very productive. Do we all get that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And finally, and most importantly, what can you do with your anger? Well, we know that we don't want to hold on to it, do we? No. There are some people that want to, but it's not a place that I find very peaceful at all. Holmes wrote this: when our minds are filled with thoughts of anger, hatred, and resentment, we are pouring into our body poisons in the making. Too much of this disturbs the upbuilding of the body tissue. But degenerative thoughts can be turned into creative, energizing, vitalizing ones. Anger can be turned into love. And the very power that has been destroying us can be made to build us up. And I suspect your brain just said, that's all well and good. But how? How can I do that? How do I turn it all around? It's a habit. It's inside of me. It's in that thing called the subconscious. And I don't even realize most of the time I'm doing it. I just automatically switch. And then I also get angry with myself for being angry. Anyone relate to that? So what that does is, though, it fuels the fire. It fuels the fire. And you might even say, I don't know how to make it stop. So I'm going to throw out two wild ideas. One is to realize that what you need in that moment is not only a breath, because I always say the breath is the pause. Taking that breath and love, the real deal, the real deal. So get loved by expressing your anger to someone who can love you right in the middle of you being angry. That is the greatest gift someone can do for you, or you can do for someone else. If someone calls you really, really angry, to love them right when they're in the middle of that anger. A great deal of damage is done to relationships when we express our anger at the person that we are actually angry at. So many times, it is best to call someone and be angry, let them know about your anger so that you can at least vent. You can vent it out. And then we feel a little bit better. a little bit better. But when we express the anger directly at the person, do we ever feel better?
No.
Not really.
Is the relationship made any better?
No.
And do we feel closer to the person?
No.
Right? By expressing your anger to someone else who can love you right in the middle of that anger is very, very, very helpful and very healing. And the other way that we can release this is to surrender it to the divine. You know, let go and let God. Sometimes you got to take that breath. You got to take that breath and realize, I truly say this to myself, and I'm saying it more and more. What would love to hear? I have to keep repeating that. I'm going to keep repeating that. You're going to hear me say it over and over again, because it truly is the only way I can get, sometimes in certain situations, to a place of peace. What would love to hear? So this is being all corny and like up in the air, and this is real. This is life. We all have anger. We all have emotions. We don't want our emotions to control us. It's up to us, that divinity that is us, to control the emotions, right? And so, if you could just stop in that moment and have a conversation with God, it could go something like this. God, I do not know how to get rid of this on my own. I of myself can do nothing, right? I do not know. I've had this for years. But I know that you can help me change it and transmute it. I know that you will give me what I need. The universe, God, divinity, whatever you call this higher power, whatever you call this divine energy, will give you exactly what you need in that moment. Trust it, because it does. If you will just accept the help when it comes. If you will believe that the divine knows exactly what you need. You may be sitting there thinking about the anger you've had in the past. Really, some anger. I don't like anger. We've all had times of anger, though, either directed at us or in us. And now you choose to get rid of it. I let it go. I let it go. God, I of myself can do nothing. It's brilliant. It's so simple. The simplest things are the most brilliant things to use. So I ask you this morning to trust in the divine, knowing that it's always there for you, your life. Don't give up on it. Do not give up. And permanently let it go. What would love do here? Again, what would love do here? And when we turn to the divine in that moment, it comes. We are promised by the great master teacher Jesus, who said, and everything that you ask in prayer, believe and you shall receive. Anger will be transmuted inside of you. Remember, emotions are temporary. They are not permanent. They are changing all of the time, because that divinity within us is always at peace. It's always in that state of love. And so when we learn how to turn within and connect with that, we can move through those emotions, which we will have while we're here in humanity, but we can have tools. Dana was talking about tools. This is part of your toolkit. Part of it. Big part of it. Transmutation means it's like putting a log into a fire and using it as fuel and energy for a few good purposes. So first of all, realize that God is a God of love. Only a oneness, who will continually produce good in your life, because you are made out of that God stuff. So I'm going to close now with a quick reading from Charles Fillmore, Talks on Truth, where he wrote this. The love of God must be felt in the heart. That's why we got to clear away those old beliefs, that bag that we've been dragging around. Because I couldn't feel it in my heart until I did all that work. And it took many years. It doesn't have to, but it did. But once that was cleared, then that whole, it was like movement in this heart chakra area. Beautiful. The love of God must be felt in the heart. It cannot be described. And one who has not felt it can have no concept of it from the description of others. But the more we talk about love, the stronger it grows in consciousness. And if we persist in thinking loving thoughts and speaking loving words, we are sure to bring it into our own experience. And the feeling of that great love that is beyond description, the very love of God, can take place. So I invited each of us this week, if you get into a situation that brings up that emotion of anger, just take that breath, pause a moment, and connect with it. And just ask yourself, really, what would love do here? What would love do here? You don't have to believe anything I'm saying, just do it. And in doing it, you'll feel the shift. You really will. So that's what I have for you. Great week.